Hi, this is the Asian Film Review with Adam.
And Shirley?
And Shirley.
Don't call me Shirley.
Yeah, don't call him Shirley. That's very overly simplistic, and it caught me off guard.
Well, I'm going to say it's, I forget. There's a part in Paprika that we're going to cover, and that line automatically popped into my head.
You'll have to kind of point it out, because I'm not sure which you're talking about.
I'll have to go back and look at it myself. Because I remember, I remember because it instantly happened. I said, "Oh, don't call me Shirley." And now that we're recording this, I've completely forgotten, which makes it a moot point.
Yeah, that's okay. So this is a highly recommended episode, and we are covering the 2006 film Paprika. And I want to do a quick note here before we kick this one off. Neither of us are really into anime. We don't have any problems with it. We're not going to turn this into an anime podcast. This might be the first, maybe last, we're not going to do one until much further down the line, if we're going to do one at all. So we're not trying to be noticed by Senpai or anything like that. Yeah, but I picked this one because it is a personal favorite, and Preston hadn't seen it, so we decided it had a lot of talking points that didn't just make it an anime.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, Paprika 2006, when a machine that allows therapists to enter their patients' dreams is stolen, all hell breaks loose. Only a young female therapist can stop it. Paprika. Okay, so Satoshi Kon was born in 1963. He studied at the Mashino College of the Arts. He began his career as a manga artist. He then moved to animation and worked as a background artist on many films. Then in 1995, he wrote an episode of the anthology Memories. Have you seen Memories?
I don't think so.
I remember it got a bit of buzz behind it. It was supposed to be it was like 3 different directors, so it's kind of an anime anthology, but they were all considered to be pretty solid. So in 1997, he directed his first feature film, Perfect Blue, and then he went on to Millennium Actress, and then Tokyo Godfathers in this film. So, I'm guessing you've only seen Perfect Blue.
I haven't even seen Perfect Blue.
No?
Mm-mm.
For shame.
I am.
He also did a TV show called Paranoia Agent, which was a 1-season anime series, so just 12 episodes. Perfect Blue is a really good thriller. I don't think you would necessarily like Millennium Actress or Tokyo Godfathers.
Because I'm a heartless monster.
Exactly. They're both very feel-good, pretty movies, so
okay.
I know how much you hate that.
Yes.
And he was a Libra, so he did die at the age of 47. And when directors pass away, it's always sad. But for some people, who's that one that I can't believe I'm blanking on who passed away recently?
Wes Craven?
Wes Craven, yeah. People seem to get really upset, and for me, it didn't really do anything or matter. He had lived out his life. He didn't really have anything left in him film-wise, so it didn't break my heart. But when I found out Satoshi Kon died, he's one of those few directors that growing up I started following, and I knew he was, he wasn't that old. 47 is pretty early to go, so it was a big bummer when I found out. So yeah, it's the only time I'll admit being really upset by a director dying.
Yeah, and 47 is young for someone to go.
Yeah, for sure. Especially there was a project in the works. I can't recall much information about it, but he died during a project, and it's gone. It's in limbo. So this is based off of a book by Yasutaka
Susu.
Susui. Yeah. And I really dig the author as well. The story is very similar, but it's kind of hard to match the visual flair of an anime. So it's one of the few times I actually enjoyed the adaptation a bit more than the original book. But the book is still very entertaining. So if you were interested, you could always check that out.
So is this one of those rare instances where the movie is actually better than the book?
I think so. But you can still...
I'm saying it's not to say the book is bad.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. If you like the film Paprika, you can still go back and check the book. There's enough differences that it's worthwhile doing both. So I have a couple quotes here, and Preston, it's your job to listen carefully and break these down. Because they are long. So I want you to try to pick out some points and see if you agree, disagree, if you find it interesting or not. So both of the films you're already bored. So both of the films, the quotes here are on Paprika. So first one in here is, I was constantly trying to delve into my subconscious instincts while making Paprika, which is pretty difficult to do when you're completely conscious. The problem is that you lose focus and the actual creation process stalls. Still, you try to recreate that sensation of dreaming, although it's nearly impossible. I found that it was hard to force myself to ignore things like logic and reasoning. I think that within human nature and within the human heart as well, there's just a ton of absurd impulses and instincts. But you can't express those things because society has created these rules that declare that things can't warp. It's a rule that maintains a sense of balance in the world, but you're restricted like that. You tend to release those impulses within your dreams. Everything warps. I think that in the past we were able to symbolically experience such things within the framework of reality. I think religious ceremonies would be a good example of that. Now we don't have that. So
Okay.
So did you pick up anything on that?
Yeah, I'm say it definitely rings true, because I agree with what he stated. You can't really capture dreams. You can invoke a sense of dreamlike, but it's an experience that you simply can't recreate because there's nothing like it.
Yeah. And we'll talk about it in this film. He doesn't... it's hard to... We'll get into it because you have some notes and we'll kind of break it down a bit better. But this film is successful in some ways in kind of capturing that. So I think he did succeed. Somewhat, at least.
Yeah.
So there's other quote here, another one. It's like drawing a line on the ground that's 8 inches wide. If you told someone to walk on top of it, they could. But then if you tell them that the line is 300 feet in the air, people start to use their imaginations. They think they'll fall through the sky. People will accept that is how it is. So now we have a ton of rules and restrictions around us. Those things keep us safe, but I think it also sterilizes us. So things like imagination, one's willingness to believe in the abnormal, have all but been eliminated from our daily lives. For all intents and purposes, the end result of which is soberingly bad reality, which is pretty much what we live in today. In the film, Paprika is the entity that lets you experience the utterly fantastic and absurd elements of life. I think that is the type of story. I think that this type of story is becoming increasingly rare unless it's about drugs. And I do apologize for my phone going off. I'm going to kill the volume on that.
Well, I'm actually laughing at the quote because that is a lot of truth. And say that for whatever reason we associate, the fantastic and the absurd with drug tripping.
Yeah, I really like that ending of that, kind of being able to tell these type of tales without having it something being induced by drugs, and kind of using that as a plot device, a reasoning behind it.
Yeah, I'm saying it also ties into the element when I can see somebody watching this like, wow, the director must have been on drugs. And I'm saying it's a very cliched saying, but it's an obnoxious saying. To
Yeah,
steal a quote from Charlie Brooker, who says it's an insult to the imagination, saying that.
yeah, for sure.
And I think he really does what he does with Paprika really captures what he's saying here, you know, because we're told constantly as children to let our imaginations run wild, but as we grow up, we're told no, you have to fall in line, you have to do certain things. Like, I guess the easiest way to say it is, like, say you get a coloring book, you're told you have to stay within the lines.
Mm-hmm.
And what he's trying to do is say, no, we can go outside those lines.
Yeah.
And children do that, but as adults, we can say, no, everything needs to fit into a certain place.
Yeah. No, I really like these two quotes. They're very well thought out, and they don't really, they're not pretentious. It's just kind of well thought out observations by him, I believe.
Yeah. I'm saying I can also, I'm kind of going back to my own crappy metaphor about children.
That's okay.
It makes me think of that. I think Picasso, I'm pretty sure it's Picasso who said, people spend their lives trying to create art like the masters, but he wanted to spend his life trying to learn how to draw like a child.
Yeah.
Because of that. Because you want to go back to this point where you have no rules.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good quote. It's a good draw. Quick question, because this didn't come up, but I'll touch on it very quickly here. Would you show this to a kid? Do you think it's a kid-friendly film?
I think so. I'd say there is nudity in the movie, but it's not offensive. It gets a little touch and go because there is a rape-like sequence in it.
Yeah, that's the only one I can think of that kind of pops up in my head as being more adult material.
But I think in the context of a child, they wouldn't really register it as that. Or at the very least, you should explain to your child.
Yeah, I'm looking at my DVD and they have it rated as PG, so that makes sense. So his final testament, which is quite touching, with feelings of gratitude for all that is good in this world, I put down my pen. Well, I'll be leaving now.
That's so sad.
It is very sad. I wonder. Okay, I could go on a big tangent. I'm going to leave it. Maybe that's a discussion for another day. I was just thinking of death haikus and seeing if it fit that structure, but that's a long history and story we don't need to get into. So, on to the movie. Cast, we have... I'm not mentioning who did the voice acting, so I'm just skipping over that. We have Paprika / Chiba. We have Osani, which is the henchman. Konakawa, which is the detective. Dr. Tokita, the fat guy. And then the chief, I just put him as chairman. And that's really more just for our own reference.
Yeah, I'm saying... The other doctor, I honestly don't know what his name was. I'm saying everyone just refers to him as Chief.
No. Oh, yeah. Sorry. You're right. I was wondering, I thought I threw in an extra credit there for a second, but yeah. Okay. So.
Well, there is another doctor involved in that, but I wouldn't really say he's an important character. Well, I guess he is, but it's not really worth mentioning.
Okay, no. So the chief I have is now I'm remembering, he's the short guy.
Well, they're technically
with the white hair.
Yes. The other short guy is Hiroma, I believe.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Hiroma, something like that.
That's the one that I forgot to write down. So, whatever. We'll try to remember that. But the chief in my notes is that old short guy with the white hair. So I'm going to start kind of vague to kick it off because I think we want to talk about the film as a whole near the end. Mm-hmm. So we're going to keep notes somewhat light, and then we're going to kind of do a complete overview of this film because I think it warrants a discussion overall and not just these few talking points.
Okay. Before we go into, because I noticed some of the notes have changed. Let's talk about music first, because I think that's actually one of the first things you'll notice once the movie starts up.
I love the music in this so much. I have the soundtrack for it kicking around.
Yeah, I'm gonna say it's. How would you describe the music style? It's very interesting.
I don't even know. Like, it's closest to pop, but that's a tough one.
Yeah, because it's almost like he remixed, did like a pop remix of traditional Japanese music.
Yeah,
It's very interesting because
it's frantic, but in a pretty way.
yes, I'm gonna say it. There's a lot of electronic. You'll notice, for obvious reasons. There's also a lot of traditional sounds you'll find in it.
Hmm. Yeah, well, I believe there's a voice that's kind of distorted throughout it. At least that's what it sounds like. There's actually a track as well where they do have the vocals on the record, which I don't believe it made its way to the soundtrack, unless it was the closing song. I can't recall.
And you say that might be because the closing track has very odd vocals in it. Because it like caught my attention. I was like, "What the fuck is that?" Because it sounds like almost like really heavily processed vocals.
Yeah, well, the singer has been kicking around for quite some time, but the rest of his music is pretty bad. It seems with Paprika, he had something more in mind to fit with the film, but other than that, it's just kind of generic, boring Japanese pop music, rock music. So, but the soundtrack comes together very nicely. First time I watched this, I remember it sending chills down my spine. Just kind of the setup. I like the sequence where Chiba is riding our car and we kind of see Paprika jumping back and forth with her, and then that's when the first music kicks in. So, but other than the music, a obvious question: did you like the style?
Yes. I'm gonna say sorry. I'm trying to think of how I want to start this off, but yeah, I'm gonna say there are a lot of traditional design elements, in terms of both just anime and Western animation that you kind of recognize and if you've seen since you were a child. I'm saying that's a lot of fun, but it never feels like a children's movie.
No.
I know it kind of contradicts what we were saying earlier, but like even though it's animation, it doesn't feel like a children's movie, and it's not also in reference to the content of the movie.
Yeah.
It's just it's a really nicely done style.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to be big into animation when I was a kid. I'm gonna say, I drew all the time, and that's just what I liked. And I actually watched anime more so than like Western animation.
Yeah, I think we were both kind of in the same boat, but we kind of fell out when we got into live action cinema.
Yeah, I'm gonna say it's one of those things that happens. Like, I'm sure you're the same. I'm gonna say it happened when I became a teenager.
Yeah. Pretty much, and the way I see it, you can only choose so much Japanese film, so I kind of cut out anime.
Yeah, and what you're basically hinting at the beginning of this episode is, and something I know you joked around with Paul, is basically like anime is like a rabbit hole, is just this never-ending pit. So I mean, you have to make a conscious effort, saying, this is what I'm going to get into. It's not really something that can be viewed casually.
It's a lifestyle choice.
It really
pretty
is.
much, yeah. Yeah, that's kind of the way that I see it.
And but with this movie, what really stands out to me is the animation is very smooth. It has a very fluid movement, and it's one of those things you'll recognize when you watch animation, but you may not understand why. But animators, take shortcuts when they animate the in between frames.
Yeah.
Because otherwise they'll spend a lifetime just drawing a mere few seconds, and they focus on the keyframes, the putting in the detail, and making it look nice. In this one, it's just so well done, and everything is treated very well, and it creates a very fluid and natural movement, which I think is very key into the transitions between the worlds and the dreams.
Yeah. In that regard, you might actually like Millennium Actress, though it's kind of a romance story. It uses a lot of the same film shots like that, where it's a woman kind of reflecting on her past, so they cut back and forth between her tale and kind of real time life.
Mm-hmm.
So it has a very nice flow like that as well. And everything he's made has a similar visual style. Perfect Blue looks a bit more rough in some places, but I can't recommend Perfect Blue enough for you.
Yeah,
To
say
you, yeah.
I can probably, I haven't seen the movies, but I can probably guess that, like Perfect Blue was like his first directing job, so he probably didn't have the resources given to him.
It was his third, but that's
Oh, it
okay.
was his third? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm saying that's fine. I'm fine with being wrong. I don't know what I'm talking about here, but it's
it's darker.
Yeah.
So maybe, anyways, we're not here to talk about Perfect Blue, but I recommend all of his films.
Yeah.
Because visual style, they're all pretty much the same.
Yeah, I'm saying I can just see, with something like Millennium Actress, Tokyo Godfathers, and this, they had more resources, maybe something with more animators at his disposal.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe just enough more budget just to be able to do more with the animation.
Yeah. Now, one thing that I really dig and I thought amusing, and it happened to me the first time too, but someone else I was watching the movie, I thought the titles just went batshit crazy when the first time they enter that dream world, when people just start saying random shit.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if you kind of got caught in that as well.
I did, and it's an easy mistake to make, especially if you've ever seen an Asian translation into English. I'm saying you can see that most notably in Hong Kong films.
Yeah.
Like those subtitles are just the worst. So in this case, when it popped up, I got really frustrated because it was all basically nonsense.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to catch up with it because I thought there was important information being delved into, and then when it's revealed that it's a dream, it's like, oh, okay, it is nonsense to an extent, but it's not something I really need to worry about.
Some of the stuff that they hint in, though, because there's a few scenes where people just talk rubbish or talk, like, say random things. They do make themselves into the dream world a bit. I remember one girl talking about the refrigerator in the parade.
Mm-hmm.
And then later you see in the ever-growing parade refrigerators added. So I actually didn't make this as a talking point, which I'm surprised I've looked over, but I really liked the parade quite a bit.
Yeah.
It made me quite happy whenever it showed up. It was just so over the top and fun with the music and just a lot of visual flair and a lot to look at.
Yeah, I'm saying that's one where you can really appreciate the sound design of the movie, the extent of the animation, because holy shit, there's a lot going on in the parade sequence.
Yeah.
I'm saying it kind of reinforces like what you're saying. When the characters start spouting nonsense, it does sound like nonsense, but you can see the things that they're saying can be reflected in the parade, like you're saying the refrigerator, and that comes from he's saying that this new I forget what they call it, DC something or other.
DC Mini.
Yeah, they're saying it's going to be the next revolution in technology, like the refrigerator. And so you just see little pieces of things like that. You see technology, you see armor. Sorry. You see like armor from different eras of Japanese history. So it's
a lot of toys, a lot of traditional Japanese items.
Yes, there's a lot of reality into it, even though it's completely ridiculous looking.
Yeah, for sure. Dan, thinking about this, there's so many notes I should have made, but I don't even know if we want to get into it. What would you buy a DC Mini?
No.
No. I don't know if I would either.
No.
The idea of accessing someone else's dreams seems more terrifying than enjoying.
Yeah. I would say it's almost one thing I kind of wish the movie would have touched on, but that's completely unnecessary. But it's like this journey that all these characters went on, I would imagine it would make you fucking insane.
Yeah. Well, Paprika kind of has to separate herself from Chiba, it seems. They're two different people, really. Did that work for you, or did you find it a bit too stark of a difference between the two?
No, it worked. Say, for one, the movie doesn't try to make this a big reveal that Paprika and Chiba are the same person. It pretty much tells you from the beginning, that's who she is.
Mm-hmm.
They are the one and the same. And there's a lot of subtle um, hints in the dialogue, saying that you can release your subconscious into the dream world, and that's important for people, to become what they suppress. And
Mm-hmm.
you can see that as, Paprika as being this. She is a completely different character, but that's who she is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then later on they pretty much separate entirely.
Mm.
So yeah, I enjoyed that aspect of both of them and how she was able to separate herself. It made sense to me to have
Yeah.
like these two different personalities, one to deal with the dream world, and then kind of the cold exterior that Chiba had to deal with things. So
Yeah, I'm saying it was a good way to help develop the Chiba character.
mm-hmm. um, well, this is going to be pretty much not spoiler heavy. I'm thinking it's so mind-boggling how much little details there is here, because we have a few notes still going, but as we go, just so many random scenes and moments pop into my head. It really is a visually stunning, and it's just a visually stunning film all around.
It's a
There's so
very
many little touches you could talk about.
Yeah, it's a very thick movie, so I mean, we do really have to jump around because we would just spend just way too much time if we were just to go through it from A to B.
Yeah, because there's a lot of scenes I like where it kind of warps between early on when it warps between reality and the dream world.
Mm-hmm.
That one sequence where Chiba goes to the apartment of that other guy, the Haru. You remember his name that you said?
I think it's Hirumo. Hirumo.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
like it's Hirumo.
Yeah, and she almost ends up jumping over the balcony because she's kind of, half in the dream world.
Yeah.
I really dug that scene. Just the transition to dream to all of a sudden someone reaching out to grab her and her becoming aware of the distance below, right?
Yes.
Which I think maybe might harken back to his quote talking about the line that he drew, but then telling someone it's 300 feet high kind of changes their view of it. But
Mm-hmm.
I could be wrong.
No, I'm saying that sounds like a perfectly fair assessment.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm saying it's like I'm just trying to think of how I want to say this, but yeah, I'm say how live action movies handle transitioning between the two. They usually make it very blunt and obvious, and this one it's handled in a very smooth manner. I mean, it is intended to help kind of throw off the viewer, so you don't know what's real and what's not.
Mm-hmm.
But it's he exploits the medium in an appropriate manner and uses that to his advantage in really just kind of erasing that line that separates the two.
Yeah.
Which makes sense because I mean, when you were dreaming, that feels entirely real.
Yeah.
And there are just moments where you cannot, even like when you first wake up, you sometimes can't tell the difference of where you are.
Mm-hmm. Another completely random observation. Do you think Paprika mentions at the beginning of the film that the later stages of sleep are more active? Like there's more content to kind of break down, analyze, and that's kind of how the film is structured.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of the last 3/4 really kick into gear as far as the material and everyone kind of molding into this one single dream.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that was the plan or if it's just the way it works structure-wise, but
I would say that was the plan because, I mean, there was a lot of thought put into this. There, like you were saying before, there's so much detail into this movie that I don't see it as being a mere coincidence.
yeah. One thing it does get a bit busy near the end to a point where it is a bit of a sensory overload because we no longer have that break into reality.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still some small touches that made me laugh. I love how the girls turn into cell phones during the parade, and then the guys turn into cell phones as well and take the picture of the women from below to get a skirt shot. So just a lot of weird randomness like that thrown in.
Yeah, there's a lot of genuine cultural references in there, and which is important, because as we were talking about earlier, it grounds the movie.
Yeah.
Because it's so far gone into fantasy. It's the kind of movie that will instantly create dissonance between the viewer and the movie, because there's one, it's an animated movie, and two, it's dealing in fantasy. So there's not really much for anything. There's nothing tangible for you to grab on. So when you have stuff like those cultural references, you have the retro toys. There is a reality to it, even if it's not real, and that gives you something to hold on to. But like you're saying, and it's just the problem with these kinds of movies that deal with dreams, where it is so easy for them to, put those abstract visuals into the structure to the point that as you're saying, it becomes a sensory overload. Yeah. So they could have used more breaks in the beginning just to kind of give you some breathing room before it just wallops you with that ending.
Yeah.
So it's just
that's really my only critique of the film, but it was kind of hard to get around.
Yeah, it's just a very tricky area.
Yeah. But I still think it did very good.
Yeah. No, I'm saying it's not to a point where it becomes boring. Well, I guess it is to an extent, but repetition is important to this movie, so...
Yeah. Yep. So, for me personally, the detective was my favorite character.
Yes.
Beside Paprika.
I would actually consider him the main character. I mean, he's really the person I think the viewers are supposed to relate to.
Mm-hmm. So... his dreams are very steeped in traditional cinema. And a part of that is because he fell out with cinema so long ago because of an incident with a friend. So I like how it kind of draws on more classic themes, once again helping to ground the film. Like he sees Tarzan, he sees... it's all a typical romance, a typical action film. But it still looks good. The transitions between them are good, but I just really liked his character and how his dreams kind of played out.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm getting into a discussion with the director, Michael Todd Schneider, about his movie, Let's Make a Horror Movie. And there is a kind of a tired metaphor in there. I mean, you see it in lots of movies. I'm not trying to insult this movie. Where you see somebody watching a movie screen and you see their life projected on it. I mean, that's used in so much stuff. To Holy Motors, to I'm sorry, I'm just blanking. In the Mouth of Madness. I can't think of the director that you really like. The guy who made Bad Cops or Wrong Cops.
Quentin Dupieux, Mr. Oizo, basically.
Yeah, I assume he used a similar element in his movie Reality or Realities.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm saying that same metaphor is used here, and like you're saying, it references a lot of classic cinema, but it really brings you in to understand the importance of it, and to me that's where this movie became so much more than about fantasy. Paprika to me is a love letter to movies, really.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, so much of this becomes about movies. And it's a movie that's about movies, and how the movie is made celebrates what it takes to make a movie. So it's about structure, it's about characters, it's about sound design, it's about editing. Editing in particular, there's so much emphasis on that.
Yeah.
That to me, this is what Paprika became about. It became about this detective character and just this concept of losing yourself to movies, really.
Yeah. No, you make a convincing point. I think he's more interesting than Paprika.
Yeah, I'm saying, I'm not trying to dismiss Paprika, because she is an important character, and I like that there is a female lead.
Well, she takes up the bulk of the film, really, but I think the film kind of centers around him from kind of the start to the end.
I mean, he is essentially the everyman. He is us, the viewers.
Yeah.
Paprika saves the day, and say, but we are the detectives.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And it ends on a very romantic note. He can't. I know I'm semi spoiling, but really, with everything that we've said, it's. You have to watch the film. We're not really spoiling much of anything. There's just way too much going on to kind of cover it in one podcast. But in the end, Paprika, when she leaves him behind, she does mention that he should go and see this movie. And I just want to point out a humorous touch that I found was where the theater that he went to, all the posters were for his previous films, which I found somewhat humorous.
That's just a very sweet little touch.
Yeah.
It's not self-indulgent. It's just this. There is no fourth wall in this movie.
Yeah.
So to me, that's just like the one last little wink from the director to the audience.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost curious if I think it's called Dream Children, that the movie he's going to go see, or Dreaming Children. Mm-hmm. And I was just kind of wondering if that was going to be something down the line.
Maybe it was his next project. I really wish I could recall details about it. I just remember it sounded very good, and I was disappointed to know that it wasn't going to be made. I believe it was some sort of fantasy involving a child, so maybe that is the case.
Guess we'll never know.
Guess we'll never know, unfortunately. Very sadly.
Yeah.
So, what genre would you call this film?
I'd call it everything. I mean, that sounds like a cheap cop out, but it does everything. There's a lot of the movie there's heart in it, especially in the ending. You know, there's drama, comedy, science fiction. It touches on so much, which again I think kind of pushes the point forward that this is a movie about movies. Yeah.
The biggest takeaway I got though was the romantic aspects of it. For some reason, that's what really stuck with me.
Well, yeah, because I mean, it doesn't. I almost want to say it comes out of nowhere, but it really doesn't. I'm saying it's not to a point where
when it appears, it makes complete sense.
Yeah, and it doesn't. You know, you're not saying, "Whoa, you know, what the fuck is this?" It's just a very nice moment.
Yeah.
Again, it gives the movie weight because there is a little bit of reality and there is heart to this, because this could have just easily been just abstract nonsense of people going from dream to dream and just be complete fantastical escapism, and it would just been forgettable. But he brought out so much into the story.
Yeah. So something I had recalled, and you might be a bit more familiar with this, because I think you might have even been the one that mentioned it originally. But I have not seen Inception, but my understanding is Nolan bought the rights to it.
Yeah, I can't say for sure, but that's what I've heard.
And the Perfect Blue, the rights were also bought for the director who made Black Swan as well. So it's weird. In Japan, they were going to remake a live action one of this, but I don't see them doing that without relying almost 100% on CGI.
Yeah,
which would kind of defeat the purpose of making a live action. So in a way, that might be good that never happened and turned into Inception, which is a different film from my understanding, but I am guessing not as good.
No, and I agree. This, yeah, because I mean, I can't see this movie working in a live action. Like I said, I've seen visual comparisons between Inception and Paprika, and like I said, I've heard that he did buy the rights, so he could implement stuff from Paprika into Inception. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying I don't think Nolan has ever really denied, saying oh no, I never knew about it. This is my own movie.
There's not necessarily shame in that. I don't.
Yeah, no.
Don't really fault him. Just like the Darren Aronofsky, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it, but he's the one that bought rights to Perfect Blue to make Black Swan. But I don't really fault them. They're good stories, so when they are different.
Mm-hmm. Like, to me, and I hate the word reimagining because it's a bullshit term used to hide the fact that it's a remake. It's nonsense. But Inception to me is a movie that I would call a reimagining of Paprika.
Yeah.
I say that in a completely non-disparaging way because it's important that we have actually both Paprika and Inception because it shows the importance of different mediums.
Mm-hmm.
Because Satoshi, is that the director's name, right?
Yeah, Satoshi Kon.
Yeah. He was able to do so much more than Inception because he could control so much more. He could take it further. But, I still kind of respect what Nolan did with Inception. I don't really consider it a good movie, because I started to any fans of it. But like the rotating hotel room fight. That's as close as you can get without doing computer animation, and I thought that was a very respectable effort.
That's pretty much the only scene from it that I've seen because someone pointed out that it was a good scene.
Yeah, I'm gonna say it shows the technical quality of that, even if he couldn't take the idea as far as Paprika did.
Mm-hmm.
This probably might not be like the right environment for this discussion.
Okay.
I have a general problem with Nolan and his fans.
Why does that not surprise me?
Like, I personally don't give a shit.
What else has he directed?
He directed the Batman trilogy, Memento, Interstellar.
Yeah, all those films have a lot of hype behind them, but none of them really did anything for me. And especially with Batman, I'm a huge Batman fan, and I didn't go past the first one.
Yeah, I'm saying, and I actually don't really give a shit one way or another about Nolan. I'm saying he's a good director. I'm not trying to say he's bad or insult him, but the problem I have with how he views his own movies and how his fans view his movies is they're considered these extremely intelligent movies, but they're really not. They're very, very blunt and simplistic.
Yeah.
Say, I haven't seen everything. I haven't seen Interstellar just because I didn't give a shit.
Yeah, it's so slow paced. I'm not a big fan of science fiction as is, and I heard it's kind of like a slow paced drama, is it not?
Basically, it's his version of 2001.
Oh, okay.
He's a high concept director. That I will give him, but his movies aren't intelligent to me.
Yeah.
Have you seen the movie Ed Wood?
No, again, to alienate people, I really despise the director of that, Tim Burton. Yeah. See, I even had a problem recalling because that's how far removed he is in my memory. I'm just not interested in anything he does.
I can understand that. If I were to recommend somebody to watch one Tim Burton movie that isn't a Tim Burton movie, it would be Ed Wood. Ed Wood is actually a really good movie. But in the movie, there's a line where they're filming the famous cemetery scene from Plan 9, and an actor knocks his headstones over, and the producer comes up to Ed Wood and he goes, "Hey, aren't you going to do another take? These headstones fell over." He says, "Nobody will notice that." He goes, filmmaking is not about the small details, it's about the big picture.
Yeah.
And I see that in Nolan's work. He is about the big picture, and he lets a lot of details fall by the wayside, and it affects the movies in a great deal because it creates a lot of inconsistencies and problems in the logic. Yeah. But when you look at the greater concept, they work.
Mm-hmm.
Paprika is a movie, so much focus is put on the detail. So much. The important thing about movies is it's a visual storytelling medium.
Yeah.
And the scene that we were talking about before is when Chiba goes into Hiromo's apartment. You understand this Hiromo. I'm saying stop probably saying that name so
Yeah,
wrong.
that's fine.
But you understand who this character is just by this environment that was created. Nobody
Yeah.
says anything about it. Nobody. Everyone just says, where's this guy at? He stole this device that we need.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you see a lot of his motivation in like the books that he keeps.
He's an otaku who is extremely jealous of his co-worker's ability, right? So he's kind of obsessed. They kind of figure it out because he's first appears as that doll, so they think it's kind of his obsession with kind of, manga, anime, wanting to take on that appearance, as well as just his room being littered with photos of, faces cut out and stuff drawn on it. So
yeah, I'm gonna say there's an emphasis on his idea of creating something, creating a person, creating an identity, and it goes back to the toys. But there's also a very brief moment where you see a character look on the books, and I think one of them is titled Hard Body, and it's just a series. You see different books about men, and when I saw it, I thought it was like,
I remember that now. I don't recall it this time around, but now that you pointed out, I remember a couple times before noticing it.
Yeah, I'm saying
whatever.
Yeah, I'm
that
saying
makes sense.
No, I understand it because it's a small detail. It's like it's not front and center. You're not looking at. You don't see these books from the point of view of Chiba, who's looking at it. It's like off to the bottom left-hand corner of the screen.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first saw it, I thought it was like indicating that this was a gay character, and it ties back into the like suppression themes of it. But those books give you all the motivation because he's frustrated by his short stature. He's just this short, fat, ugly little guy.
Yeah.
And so he uses his string to become the person that he wants because he wants Chiba.
Yeah.
And saying you get all of that information strictly through visuals. I'm gonna say there's no exposition that just buries you in boring dialogue and monologues.
Yeah.
And and to me that shows the importance of details.
Mm-hmm.
And to me that's also why I would put a movie like Paprika, miles above Inception, because the director, he put thought into everything. Everything has a reason. Everything has a purpose.
Yeah.
And say no one was able to capture his concept because he creates the big picture, but it's not an intelligent movie because he paid no attention to the details.
Yeah. When I covered Perfect Blue back in the day on a different podcast, we kind of pointed out that it's not just about being a good anime film. It's a solid film as is. Like, you don't need to differentiate. Like, if someone doesn't like anime, you can still point at a film like this and say you should watch it anyways, even if you don't like anime.
Absolutely. And this is a movie that I would tell anybody to watch. I would tell you to watch it if you want to understand movies being more than entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like I said, this movie is a movie that's about movies. There's so much emphasis that's put on I'm saying it's tough to talk about because there's the movie within the movie, and I'm talking about movies, and then there's the character Paprika, and then there's the movie Paprika.
Yeah.
But, like, the movie Paprika, there's so much emphasis on the technical aspect, like we were talking before, about the transitions between, the dreams. That watching this movie and watching those sequences, you will get such a great appreciation for framing and editing.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's also understanding of how to give so much information to a viewer and letting them process it themselves without just having characters sit there and say, well, I feel this way because this is happening.
Yeah.
And it's a technically important movie.
Yeah. No, for just a random scene that's kind of that's coming to mind that I want to jump back at. I really like when the detective kind of talks about the past with his friend and why he got out of cinema in the first place. He does a bit of explaining to Paprika about how a film is shot. But I even just like the story behind him and his friend. The movie that he talks about they were planning to make also sounds interesting, you know. The idea of, because he said the movie that they were going to make was two people chasing each other. That's all it was, but cut in between was memories of each other. They're friends, and now one's chasing the other, so...
Yeah, to me that was like almost a very strange self-aware moment, because this is when the detective is in the cafe bar and he's talking to the two bartenders, and they say, "Oh, that sounds like an experimental movie."
Yeah,
and just so much of that dialogue you can relate back to what Paprika is.
Yeah, for sure. So I think I picked a highly recommended that you like.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because I'm not sure if this is a movie I'll go back to, because like it's
if you have someone else to watch it with, or like I've rewatched it a few times because I just had the chance to watch it with someone, so I made a point to get them to view it.
Yes, that's exactly it. Because it's not a casual viewing experience, not to me.
No.
And I never watched it, not because I didn't have an interest in it, but it's like, okay, it's people chasing each other's dreams. Got it. Not really what I'm interested in seeing, but now that I've seen it, I like it. I just not even like it. I really admire it. I admire it for its technical success, and I admire it for what it's doing.
Yeah. Would you check out more Satoshi Kon?
Yeah, I've always wanted to, see Perfect Blue. It's just one of those things. Like, I shouldn't say I have an idea of what it's going to be, but like I kind of know what to expect out of it. So it's like, okay, I'll set this over here, and I'm going to go watch something that I don't know what I'm going to get out of.
Yeah. Yeah, but you were pleasantly surprised by this one, so I think you'd be pleasantly surprised by Perfect Blue, even though you kind of have an idea of what you're getting into. So
yeah.
But this is the first time we've had really nothing bad to say about a film.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna say there are the occasional like little quirks in there, like we talked about the cyber cafe. The use of the internet here it's very thinly connected to the plot, but I'm gonna say it really depends on the viewer as if it's gonna bother you or if it's not. It's like I know you didn't really care for it, but to me it was something it was kind of a throwaway moment. It didn't really bother me, but I can see a problem with it.
Yeah. 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 I don't know. I'm just curious how this is going to come across, to be honest. Because generally, I think it's easier to shit on something than just praise it. So hopefully, we did it some justice. But it's a film that, again, we touched on a few things, but there's just so much there visually and content-wise that even though we've touched on all these things, you'll get so much more out of this movie if you watch it. Yeah,
I would say we could easily make this like a 2-hour, 3-hour podcast of just going through this movie. But you have to understand it's a high concept movie, and it meets that expectations by fulfilling every aspect of what it takes to make a great movie.
Yeah.
And it'd be very easy to, again, just break it down and say, well, this is why this works, this is why this works. But it would be such a slog. Yeah, and pretty much we only touched on 2 characters. Mm-hmm. Kind of a bit of that, whatever his name is, Hiroma, the one we don't remember. Yeah, but we didn't even talk on the henchman, the chief, the chairman, we didn't talk any of those. We didn't even talk that much about Tokita, the that scientist who plays a huge role in this as well. So yeah, I'm saying it was actually interesting because when you first see him, I was immensely bothered by him because he's like cartoonishly fat, where everything else there is again it's a cartoon, but there's still a little bit of reality there, and he is like unrealistically fat to everyone else. Mm-hmm. So I was like, what the fuck? So I thought it was just mainly being done for humor. But the movie develops the character, and you almost understand why he is the way he is. Yeah. And actually bringing him up, it reminds me of why I used the name Shirley in the beginning of this, because he, when he's in the elevator with Chiba in the beginning, he calls her At-chan, I believe. Yeah. And she says, "Don't call me At-chan."
Okay, that makes sense then. That works. I like later on when she kind of reflects on that and she puts him down again, saying like, "You're such a fat slob, but you're so much fun."
Yeah, I'm saying surprisingly he ends up being the heart of the movie. In a way, I should. Well, let me rephrase that. He brings out the heart of it.
Yeah.
Although it is kind of depressing when the detective receives the note in the end.
Yeah.
But it works out.
Yeah. I agree. I don't really have much more to say on this film, unless we want to keep on going back and picking at it. I think this is kind of a good point to leave it, because there's still a lot for people to explore.
Yeah, no, and say, like you say, just be us going back saying, "Oh, you remember this scene? That was kind of cool how I did this."
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we're good?
I'm good.
Okay, so thanks for listening.